There is something the research on emotionally healthy children shows that most parenting content will never lead with. Not because it's hidden, because it sounds like it shouldn't be true. The parents who raise the most emotionally resilient children are not the parents who never lose it. They are not the parents who regulate perfectly, who never raise their voice, who have worked through every layer of their own history before their child was old enough to notice. The research points to something more specific than that, and more accessible than that. If you have been measuring yourself against the wrong standard, and most parents in this place have been, this video is going to change what you're looking at. Let's start with where that standard came from. The belief itself deserves to be taken seriously, because it did not arrive from nowhere. The idea that emotional health in children requires a regulated, consistent, largely healed parent is not a mistake. It came from real attachment research. It came from watching children thrive in certain environments and struggle in others. It came from a genuine understanding that what happens inside the parent shapes what becomes possible inside the child. That part is true. What got distorted, somewhere between the research and the parenting content and the internal monologue running in the background at 6 p.m., is what regulated and consistent was actually supposed to mean. It got translated into something that looks like never losing it, never raising your voice past a certain decibel, never letting the exhaustion bleed into the room, never having a moment where what comes out is something other than what you intended. And once it became that, once the standard became perfect attunement, unbroken calm, continuous presence, it became a standard that no nervous system on this planet is actually built to maintain. Not because you are insufficiently committed, because continuous perfect attunement is not what the research described. It describes something harder to hold as a standard, and it turns out much closer to what you already are. So here's what the data actually shows. In decades of research on mother-infant interaction, a developmental psychologist named Ed Tronick tracked something that changed how attachment researchers understood what children actually need from their caregivers. He was not looking for perfect attunement. He found something more interesting. What he found was this: even in the most securely attached pairs, the relationships that produced the most resilient, emotionally regulated children, the attunement between parent and child was coordinated only about 30% of the time. 30%. The rest of the time, the connection was mismatched. The parent was attending to something else. The signal was missed. The child needed something the parent didn't catch in that exact moment, and the children were fine. More than fine. They were developing the specific internal architecture that would let them navigate relationships for the rest of their lives. Not because the mismatches didn't matter, but because of what happened after them. The research on this is consistent across decades and populations. What produces emotional resilience in children is not the absence of rupture. It is the experience of rupture followed by repair, the mismatch followed by the return. The moment of disconnection, and then the moment when the parent comes back, reattunes, reestablishes the contact. That cycle, not the perfect connection, the cycle. There is a term that the researcher who first described this used that has moved in and out of clinical language for decades. He called it good enough parenting, not as a consolation prize, as a precise description of what the research was showing, that the threshold for producing emotional health in children is not perfection. It is good enough, which is a different thing entirely. And now we can talk about what's really happening in those moments. When a child experiences a rupture, when the parent loses it, or misses the signal, or responds from a place of exhaustion instead of presence, something happens inside the child that is not damage. It is a question. The question is, what happens next? Is the connection gone? Is the relationship conditional on nothing going wrong? Is the safety of this relationship dependent on the adult never being activated, never being overwhelmed, never being anything other than what the child needs in this exact moment? Or is the relationship the kind of thing that can break and come back together? What the research keeps returning to is that the child's internal working model, the template they carry forward for how relationships work, for whether connection is something that can be trusted, is built not in the moments of perfect attunement. It is built in the repair. Studies on secure attachment consistently show that children with securely attached caregivers have experienced rupture, often. What distinguishes their caregivers is not that the ruptures don't happen. It is that the caregiver returns, acknowledges what happened, reestablishes the connection, and in doing so, gives the child a lived, repeated, embodied experience of the most important thing a relationship can teach. That rupture is not the end. Your child does not need to watch you be calm. They need to watch you come back. That is the curriculum, not the perfect moment, the return. And every time you go back in, every repair, however imperfect, however late, however accompanied by your own discomfort about having needed to do it, you are giving your child something that no amount of perfect regulation could give them. The experience that this relationship is strong enough to hold what actually happens in it. If this reframe is landing, if something in you is shifting from "my imperfection is the damage" to "this is something I need to understand more completely," there is a place to take it further. The Good Enough Parent course in the description is built on exactly this foundation. 8 weeks of the psychological frameworks that go underneath what this video opened. Attachment science, nervous system work, and the specific identity shift from parent who is failing to conscious ancestor already in motion. The link is in the description and the pinned comment. Now let's bring this into your actual life, tonight. Here is what this does not mean. It does not mean the ruptures are neutral. It does not mean what happens in the hard moment is irrelevant to who your child is becoming. It does not mean you can stop paying attention to what comes out of you under pressure. What it means is more specific than that, and more useful. It means the hard moment is not the verdict. The hard moment is the opening. What you do after it is where the actual work lives. Here is what repair looks like in practice, not as a technique, but as an orientation. It does not require a perfect script. It does not require that the child accept it immediately. It does not require that you have fully processed what happened inside you before you walk back in. It requires that you go back in, that you say in some form, in the words that are actually available to you in this actual moment, something that names what happened, takes responsibility for your part of it, and reestablishes that the relationship is intact. It does not have to be eloquent. It has to be honest. And it has to be you, returning. For a 4-year-old, that might look like sitting on the floor next to them and saying, "I was too loud earlier. That wasn't okay. I love you and I'm right here." For an 8-year-old, it might look like knocking on a bedroom door and sitting on the edge of the bed and not having the right words but staying anyway. For a 12-year-old, it might look like saying, "I know I handled that badly. I've been thinking about it. Can we talk?" None of those are perfect. All of them are enough. And here is what that repeated experience builds inside the child who watches it happen, who is old enough to notice even when they are not old enough to name it. The parent is not someone who has it all together. The parent is someone who comes back. Those are not the same thing. And the second one, the one you are already doing imperfectly, inconsistently, with whatever you have left, is the one that matters. If you want to go deeper into the frameworks underneath this video, the attachment science, the nervous system work, and the specific identity architecture of what it means to be a good enough parent in practice, the course in the description is where to go next. Link is there and in the pinned comment. What does repair look like in your house right now? And what makes it hardest to go back in? You came into this carrying something specific. The fear that the gap between who you are and who your child needs you to be is the thing that is shaping them. That fear is not irrational. It came from a real place. It came from loving them and knowing that love alone does not close every gap. But here is what the research actually showed. The thing this video was for. The gap is not the damage. The gap, followed by the return, is the education. Your child is not building their internal world from your perfect moments. They are building it from the evidence that accumulates across every ordinary day, the evidence of what happens when things go wrong between you. Do you come back? Do you name it? Do you stay? Every time you go back in, imperfect, late, insufficient by your own accounting, you are adding to that evidence. You are teaching them, in the only language that actually reaches them, that this relationship is not conditional, that your love does not require their compliance. That rupture is not abandonment. They will not be able to name what they learned for years. But it will be in them, in the way they re-enter a room after a conflict, in the way they let someone back in after a betrayal, in the way they understand, somewhere they cannot articulate, that a relationship broken is not a relationship ended. You put that there, not the perfect days. The repairs. You are in the middle of ending something and beginning something at the same time. Not when you finally get it right, not when the gap closes, right now. In the middle of the imperfect days that are, it turns out, exactly the right material for what you are building. Your child is not waiting for you to be perfect. They are watching to see if you come back. You always do. That is not nothing. That is the entire gift.